Welcome back to the Kaspa Silver YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be answering the question, does Kaspa having a roadmap mean it's centralized? The reason why I'm asking this question and trying to answer it is because recently Bitcoin University made a video here entitled Why Bitcoin and Not Crypto, and tried to suggest that other cryptocurrencies have roadmaps and their development cycles are much faster, and this makes it be that these other networks are more centralized than Bitcoin. So we're going to go ahead and listen into what he says here, and I'm going to kind of just break down this video and really show what I believe is a very big double standard that Bitcoiners tend to have when it comes to how development works within any proof of work network.
So what exactly makes Bitcoin so special compared to other cryptocurrencies? For one thing, Bitcoin is very, very difficult to change.
This is true for Kaspa as well. This is not unique to just Bitcoin. Let me go ahead and show you guys how you can actually change Bitcoin. When he says change Bitcoin, he means push a brand new update that could potentially break consensus rules or just add new things to the network. So this is the code of Bitcoin. It's found on GitHub. It's completely open source. This is the same exact way Kaspa functions. Kaspa's code is on GitHub, completely open source. Now, anyone cannot just come to this website here and make some changes to the code, and then everyone is forced to basically follow these changes. Anytime someone wants to make a change to the code, you actually have to fork the entire network and then push the change to the code, and then only the maintainers of the code are actually able to implement the new code that you want to push into the software. So for example here, if I wanted to come here and change this README here, I can't just go ahead and click this edit button here and make some changes. I would actually first have to fork the whole entire repository. And then once I fork the repository, make some changes, then it says right here, you are not able to edit this repository directly. You need to fork it and propose your changes from there instead. And so once you propose your change, it then goes in this section right here known as pull request. And then these are actually a list of all the different changes that are currently being proposed to Bitcoin, and only the maintainers, which is actually a few group of developers, a small group of people, are able to accept the change and implement it to the code. I recently actually did this within the Kaspa network because I found a typo in the README. And so I went ahead and forked the Kaspa network. So if I actually was to go to my profile here, you're going to see here that I actually have Rusty Kaspa as part of my repositories because this was forked from the real network. And then when I forked the real network, I went ahead and updated the README by fixing the typo. Then after I did that, it went into a pull request. And if I go to the closed one here, you could see that they already accepted my pull request. It says update README, Kaspa Silver was merged last month. So I was actually able to contribute to Kaspa in this capacity. And no one can just go ahead and add updates and then it just automatically get changed. And this is the same thing within Bitcoin. If anyone wants to make a change, you have to first fork the whole entire code, propose the change, and then only a small group of developers are able to accept your changes. And then if your change actually got accepted, it still doesn't mean that everyone is going to be now running your changes. They would still need to push a brand new release of the code that you can download, and then people would need to voluntarily download this new update. You're not forced to do any updates.
And that means if you buy some Bitcoin and fall asleep for 20 years like Rip Van Winkle did, Bitcoin will be the same when you wake up and you'll be able to access your Bitcoin. By contrast, if you fall asleep for 20 days, not 20 years with some other cryptocurrencies, you might wake up to a completely different version of Ethereum or Cardano or Monero or Kaspa, which do hard forks all the time and change even really basic things that should never be changed. For example, like the consensus mechanism.
Okay, so this is not true for Kaspa at all. He's going to go into Ethereum and explain how they changed their consensus mechanism, which is very, very bad. And this is something Kaspa would never do. Kaspa will never change from proof of work to proof of stake. Number one, the whole basis of Kaspa is trying to be the best proof of work layer one scalable network in the whole entire world. So if you change to proof of stake, then the whole entire purpose and goal of Kaspa is completely ruined. And then number two, the goals that Kaspa wants to achieve are actually only achievable on proof of work. So that's actually very, very fortunate for us. And we never have to worry about consensus mechanisms being completely changed within Kaspa. But another claim that he made here is that if you were to go to sleep and wake up 20 years with Bitcoin, you can expect your wallet to work a-okay, while with these other networks, they hard fork every single day and you potentially won't be able to wake up and your wallet will be okay. And this is just simply not true at all. You see, with Kaspa has only had 2 hard forks in its whole entire existence. The first hard fork was because a bug existed within the first 2 weeks of launching. And so this hard fork was necessary to fix this bug. And this is actually no different than Bitcoin. You see, within Bitcoin in 2010, someone was able to find an exploit within the code and inject 184 billion Bitcoin. And the only way to fix this was to propose a brand new update. Now, mind you, this update was not a hard fork, but this update was a soft fork. But it still remained true that if you never updated, your node would remain on the invalid chain, effectively cutting you off from the Bitcoin network. You could no longer contribute to the main consensus network by mining, validating transactions, or propagating blocks because the network had converged on the good chain. To rejoin the main network, you would need to update to version 0.3.1 or a later version, which would sync your node with the good chain and enforce the new consensus rules. So as you can see, if someone happened to have fallen asleep during this time and they woke up and their node was still on the old version, their wallet that is connected to that node would actually not be functional anymore. And all they would need to do is just simply update their node. And this is exactly how it works within Kaspa as well. We recently had a hard fork where we went from 1 block per second to 10 blocks per second. And this was actually the first official hard fork of Kaspa, which was very necessary to be done because it actually increased the throughput of Kaspa, made it much more faster and scalable so that more people can actually use the base layer. But anyone that had their wallets didn't have to really do anything because most of the time people are reliant on public nodes for their wallets to function. And these public nodes naturally get updated because if they don't get updated, then these wallet providers are going to have a bunch of users coming at them saying that their wallet is no longer working. And so when the Crescendo hard fork released, we had already coordinated with a lot of the wallet providers and all the mining pools to be ready for this update because we had consensus with it. There was no contentious hard fork when we did this. So everything worked very, very smoothly.
Was Bitcoin's number 2 competitor in terms of cryptocurrencies. Ethereum has many more changes coming too, all of these centrally planned by a small group of insiders. We've talked about this before. We had the Ethereum merge, and Vitalik says get ready for the surge, the verge, the purge, and the splurge. Not only are these silly names, but these are hard forks that are all centrally driven by a core group of insiders. Here's Vitalik posting the updated roadmap for Ethereum. Here's the merge, surge, scourge, verge, and purge. Only very centralized protocols that have some sort of centralized control are able to come up with a roadmap like this. Bitcoin, for example, has no such roadmap because the community is so decentralized and so diverse and varied that people can't come to any consensus about very large changes. Same with Cardano. Cardano is a lot more like Ethereum than it is like Bitcoin. This is input-output, which is basically a company that was, or a foundation company, whatever it is, that was funded by dumping Cardano on people. And this is another thing. Here is the roadmap for Cardano, which you can only have from very centralized protocols where people can get together and make a roadmap. Same with Kaspa here. Here's the Kaspa development milestones revealed. So these are all much more centralized projects than Bitcoin.
Okay, so his basis here is that Bitcoin doesn't have a roadmap, and it's because there's no developers that are just strategically getting together and trying to push new updates. But this is actually not true at all. If I was to go to the Bitcoin code right now and I head over to the issues section right here, I can find this right here that says release schedule for 30.0. And if we're looking at the code, you can see that currently Bitcoin Core software is sitting at 29.0. So there's currently a release schedule, which in other words is a roadmap being pushed by a developer right now to plan a brand new release for version 30.0. It says right here, the dates are set to target a release in early October. And so I thought Bitcoin doesn't have any roadmaps, but in fact, it does. And this is the huge double standard within the Bitcoin community. When it's convenient for them, they try to act like Bitcoin is this very neutral network that has no updates ever being pushed to it, and that no updates are ever being pushed that are contentious and requires anyone to do anything. But in fact, this update right here is actually an extremely contentious update that even Bitcoin University himself for the longest has been pushing for people to stop running Bitcoin Core. And if we look at the nodes distribution chart, you can see that 83.67% of all the nodes within Bitcoin are running Bitcoin Core, and there's currently a civil war to try to get people off of Bitcoin Core and run Bitcoin Knots. You can see multiple videos here that he was making here, Bitcoin Knots defeating core tards. He's literally calling Bitcoin Core retarded because he doesn't like a recent update that they are going to be pushing here. Not only that, look at this user right here. This user tried to propose a bug fix to Bitcoin Core to fix an exploit that he found, and he got blocked by Bitcoin Core developers. Not only that, there's this user within the Bitcoin community here saying 84% of Bitcoiners do not understand. It's over if Core 30 happens with the current commits. Asking computer scientists about this is stupid. It's a fight for the soul of the project. It's political in nature, so you can't expect their knowledge to trivially transfer over. Core are utterly useless to the damage they are doing. Those who do not understand the deception of fiat are doomed to repeat it. And so there's a current civil war within Bitcoin of people trying to get users to not run Bitcoin Core anymore because they are about to push version 30. And so when it's convenient for Bitcoiners, they act like Bitcoin doesn't have any updates. There's no centralized group of people who are pushing changes. But in reality, there is. And not only that, about over 80% of all the nodes within Bitcoin are running this exact software. And so the difference within Kaspa is that we have consensus with our changes and none of them are contentious because there are actual things that everyone agrees with and are the goals of Kaspa. And for the longest, people have always been proposing changes to Bitcoin. And this is the thing. Anyone can propose changes to Bitcoin. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go through. And it doesn't mean that it's centralized just because people try to propose changes. This is a video right here where it shows Jonathan Soplonitsky at a Scaling Bitcoin conference trying to propose the Ghost protocol to Bitcoin to make it faster. And you can even see Adam back in the audience right here. And you can see right here that the daydream of Bitcoin was to try to make it at Visa level speeds, transactions being confirmed quickly at 1 second. But unfortunately, there was no consensus for Bitcoin to update to this version. And as speaking, if they would have updated this, Bitcoin today literally would have been what Kaspa is today. But unfortunately, Bitcoin stick to their guns of rejecting any changes that are actually very useful for the network and decided to bring in this brand new narrative of digital gold and it should never change and that every single hard fork is bad. But every single hard fork isn't bad. If a hard fork happens and there's no contention within the community about the hard fork, then it is a good one. And that means we have consensus.
Bitcoin. If your crypto has a living founder or foundation that influences a future development roadmap, that's a good sign that your crypto is not very neutral or decentralized, and therefore your crypto will always be worth much less than Bitcoin since your
And this is the double standard appearing again. He says if there's a founder or foundation that's influencing the development of your network by making a future roadmap or something like that, then it's not very neutral or decentralized. But this is exactly the case within Bitcoin. Bitcoin Core has a group of developers that are known as Bitcoin Core. And these people are literally funded by companies that can influence them on certain changes. And as we can see right now, there's this specific change that's coming that even Bitcoin University himself and a lot of other Bitcoiners are not liking. And you don't even have to take my word for it. Bitcoin University then goes and release another video called This Could Kill Bitcoin. And in this very video, he concludes that Bitcoin Core is actually possibly being funded to be able to push certain updates that may be bad for Bitcoin. You can go ahead and listen to him clearly say this himself right here.
So unfortunately, I'm forced to conclude that maybe something else is driving the decisions that Bitcoin Core devs are making. It's quite likely that some devs are being compensated by Bitcoin spam companies under the table, or in indirect ways that involve actual monetary payments or favors, or more indirect ways like increased social capital and doing favors for their friends, this sort of thing. We actually have a potential disaster on our hands here, and that's because Bitcoin Core is about to make things even worse when they roll out the latest update, Bitcoin Core 30.
So is Bitcoin centralized? Is it neutral as well? There's just a huge double standard here. And not only that, Bitcoin University himself admits that not having a contentious hard fork is actually a good thing and is something that is going to happen within Bitcoin.
Kaspa, etc. So many different kinds of people and institutions all around the world hold Bitcoin that it's virtually impossible. There's so many different kinds of people, it's virtually impossible to get them to agree to any changes that are not both urgent and existential. For example, we will have some changes to Bitcoin. Eventually, we'll come up with some quantum resistant Bitcoin addresses, and this will not be at all controversial as it becomes a real risk as we get closer and closer to having powerful quantum computers, which we're still fairly far away from. But that would be an example of a change that would be urgent and existential, and people would come around to that. But they
And so there you go. He's open to the idea that there's going to be a change within Bitcoin to update to quantum resistance, and that's going to be urgent and existential, and people are going to come around. They're going to be okay with these changes. Well, fortunately for us, Kaspa has been doing changes that people are coming around and are already having consensus for it, because the changes within Kaspa are actually pretty urgent and existential. Because if Kaspa is going to be the most scalable proof of work in the whole entire world, it needs to continue scaling itself so that it can handle more people on the base layer. So is Kaspa having a roadmap make it centralized? No, it doesn't. Every single project basically has roadmaps because any developer that has access to the code can propose changes to the network, but it doesn't mean that those changes have to actually go through, because if we don't have consensus, in the case that we may not have consensus and for some kind of change, no one is forced to update their nodes. Every single time the code base gets changed, a brand new release gets published right here, and you would need to go here and download that new update to actually run your node with this new version. If you simply just not update your node, then you will stay on the old release and you don't have to worry about these new changes affecting you. Now, do keep in mind that sometimes some changes, even though they may be backwards compatible, known as soft forks, they may force you to have to change, just like the one that happened back in 2010, where someone was able to inject 184 billion Bitcoin into the supply. Even though this was a soft fork, it was backward compatible. If you didn't change, you could still be contributing to the network. Eventually, over time, though, if too many people updated to the new version, your old version will start becoming incompatible and not really being able to contribute to the network. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. And before we go, if you're interested in securing your seed phrase so that you no longer have to write it down on a piece of paper and risk losing that piece of paper due to any kind of water damage or fire damage, you should consider securing yourself iHODL cards. These cards are stainless steel and are fireproof, water resistant, and anti-corrosion. The way these cards work is that every single word that is generated for a seed phrase is actually assigned with a number. And so instead of writing down the words, these cards allows you to punch holes within it that are associated with certain numbers. When you add all of these numbers together, the number it equals will be equivalent to a certain word within your seed phrase. And then you can just safely put this card away somewhere safe within your residence, and you don't have to worry about any kind of words or any kind of damage happening to this. Instead of words being exposed on here, it's only just numbers, and it actually takes a little bit more time for someone to actually figure out your seed phrase. So if someone was to get access to this, they wouldn't instantly be able to know which words every single number is associated with, and they would have to go through the process. So I believe that this is a much more secure way to keep your seed phrase safe. Using the code CASPASILVER10 at the checkout will give you 10% off. They cost $22.50 and you get a pack of 2, and you can also pay with Kaspa at the checkout. I do receive a commission if you use my code, and I greatly do appreciate that because it does help support the channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here, and as always, don't be average, be different.